Today I'm going to continue my series looking at the songs of Shakespeare. We've talked about the songs of The Tempest, for instance, and of Twelfth Night, and today we're going to begin looking at the songs of Midsummer Night's Dream. It's another very magical play, full of all kinds of music and fairies and magic. And in fact, the music blends together with the magic in this play. Much like Ariel's magic in The Tempest often seemed connected with music, there is a connection between music and dancing with the magic of the fairies in the play Midsummer Night's Dream. At the very beginning of the play, it's established that the world is falling apart and going wrong because the fairies have stopped dancing. They've been too busy arguing with each other, and therefore, because they've been arguing instead of dancing, the world is beginning to fall apart. And there are other places throughout the play where fairy music seems to cast a kind of charm or magic over the situation. The most striking example of this, and probably the most memorable song from this play, is Titania's Lullaby, "You Spotted Snakes." Now the first line, "You Spotted Snakes," doesn't seem very lullaby-esque, but we'll get to that in just a moment. In Act 2, Scene 2 of the play, Titania is getting ready to lie down in her little bower in her bed, and she has her fairies sing a song to her to help her go to sleep. There's a bit of dramatic irony going on at this moment, because we as the audience know that Oberon is lurking around and that he is planning on getting his revenge on his wife Titania during this moment while she sleeps. He's angry at her for their disagreement, and he's wanting to claim this little boy that she has in her custody. So he plans to enchant her while she sleeps so that she falls in love with something hideous when she wakes. Titania, of course, is unaware of this, as are her fairies. And yet that context becomes very significant to the meaning of the song as we listen to it. The song goes like this. "You spotted snakes with double tongue, thorny hedgehogs be not seen, newts and blind worms do no wrong, come not near our fairy queen. Philomel with melody, sing in our sweet lullaby. Lulla, lulla, lullaby. Lulla, lulla, lullaby. Never harm, nor spell, nor charm, come our lovely lady nigh. So good night, with lullaby. Lulla, lulla, lullaby. Weaving spiders come not here. Hints, you long-legged spinners, hints. Beetles black approach not near. Worm nor snail do no offense. Philomel with melody, sing in our sweet lullaby. Lulla, lulla, lullaby. Lulla, lulla, lullaby. Never harm, nor spell, nor charm, come our lovely lady nigh. So good night with lullaby. Lulla, lulla, lullaby." So this song, in particular, is not only a lullaby to lull the queen to sleep, but it is also specifically a charm to protect her from anything that would bother her during her sleep. And so the lyrics of the song are mostly a litany of creatures that might interrupt her sleep and cause her to sleep poorly. We start with the snakes with their double tongue, their forked tongues. Then we go into thorny hedgehogs, because they would perhaps prick her. Newts and blind worms. A blind worm is a kind of legless lizard. I guess it's not quite a snake. It's kind of lizard, but it's got no legs. And then later on we mention the spiders, and we mention beetles, worms, and snails. So all of these things that have a negative connotation, things that we would not want crawling on us or around us or in our beds as we sleep. So all of this is to cast a spell of protection over the fairy. And there's also this imagery that flows throughout Midsummer Night's Dream of how very small all of these fairies are. They're able to fit within the cup of a flower. And they're also able to be bothered by what would seem to us very small inconveniences, and yet to these creatures, a giant beetle would be rather terrifying. There is, of course, an irony running through this entire song. The fact that this charm, which is supposed to protect the fairy queen while she sleeps, is not going to work. It's going to keep all of these creatures out, perhaps, but it will not keep out the one who is the biggest threat to Titania, which is her own husband, Oberon, and his plot for revenge. The play as a whole has a fun tone. It is a comedy, after all, and in many places a very light-hearted comedy, although there is some mischief that happens and a lot of characters are upset for quite a bit of the play. Ultimately everything works out, and for the most part we feel amused by the play. However, there is some weight to the argument between Titania and Oberon. I go back and forth on it sometimes. It seems, to some extent, very unfair that Oberon is going to exert his rather cruel influence over Titania, enchanting her and getting what he wants out of her without her consent or will. In the end of the play, she seems to accept this, but it is somewhat disturbing as it happens. And there is a wide debate with interesting arguments on both sides on whether the young prince, the Indian prince that Titania has in her custody, should be in the hands of the king or the queen. That aside, it does feel somewhat uncomfortable when Oberon does this to her. That discomfort is amplified, I think, tenfold by one key mention within this song. In the chorus of the song, it references Philomel. And Philomel is another name for the nightingale, and that goes back to a myth which shows up in Ovid. If you're a fan of Shakespeare, you probably have already recognized how often he cites stories from Ovid. He's a big Ovid fan. And the story of Philomela, or Philomel, and her sister Progne is a key myth within the stories of Ovid. It is one of the darkest myths, and one that Shakespeare pulls from rather heavily when he writes the play Titus Andronicus, which is hands down the most disturbing and dark Shakespeare play, one that a lot of people like to forget even exists. But for this reference to show up in a play this lighthearted definitely adds something to the tension and the tone here. I'm not going to get into all the gory details of the myth of Philomel, you can look them up yourself, but the short version is that Progne's husband, Tiresias, decides that he's in love with his wife's sister, and after committing horrific violence on his sister-in-law, she is then transformed, along with her sister, into birds, specifically the nightingale. The nightingale is known for singing throughout the night, and is often cited in Shakespeare's plays. There's another story that was familiar in Shakespeare's day of the nightingale having stolen the eyes from the serpent, and so he sings all night long in order to watch for the serpent. And so that also seems to tie in nicely here with this watching out for ugly things coming along that may disturb us. But the fact that instead of calling it the nightingale, he calls the nightingale Philomel, reminding us of that original myth, brings back to mind the imagery of a very deceitful and violent husband who is willing to destroy the life of his wife for his own personal vengeance and gain. That's a rather dark thing to be thinking of just before Oberon comes in to enchant Titania, and it certainly casts his action in a rather dark light. Thanks for watching! You can click to subscribe or to go to my Patreon channel where you can find more resources to help you in the study of Shakespeare and in other works of literature that I have up here on my channel. And I hope you'll join me again next time as I look at another song from Shakespeare. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.